So, Josh, I walk the dog every day, and I run by this porch near us, and every day these yippy dogs bark at us, and the owner always goes, shh. My question to you as we start the back nine, has any dog in the history of dogs ever responded to the command, shh? We'll tackle that more as we start the back nine.
This is the Back Nine with Dennis Williams and Josh Mora.
What do you think? Is any dog, owners always do that. Dog barks and goes, shh, shh, shh. Has any dog ever stopped barking?
No, absolutely
ever,
not.
Never.
I have the same thing. I walk a dog, and they're at the end of the loop. It's like at the halfway point of the loop, there are these two basset hounds. Basset hounds make the worst sound of any canine. They're low, and they howl, and it just hurts your ears. And every time we go by, they want to attack the little 13-pound dog.
Yeah. And the one thing I love about Frenchies, Diva, our dog is a Frenchie, is they don't give a shit. Like, they just stay in their own lane. They don't bark back. It doesn't care. Just.
I've never heard Diva bark once.
No.
She growls, but she doesn't. She has a vibration.
Yeah, it's not even. That's actually snoring. She's not growling.
She's asleep most of the time. For sure.
That's the other thing about Frenchies. They sleep 23 of 24 hours of every day.
Yeah. And sometimes they sleep on your lap, and she's a sweetheart. So I like your dog very much.
So the guest we're about to have has made a bunch of transitions in your life. I would guess, before we get to that our listeners are wondering how yours is going. Like, I mean, you've had a big life transition and career, and you're like learning new things. Maybe just a couple of quick tidbits on some of the stuff that you're.
Which one are you referring to?
I'm referring to the career.
The career one.
The job and the entrepreneurial world now that you're in.
Yeah. I mean, there's days where everything seems to be falling into place, and days where it feels like the success is perpetually around the corner. You just have to be patient with it. I mean, things have been going very well. We're several months removed from the action step that I took. And things have definitely progressed, and I feel free every day. Again, I couldn't be here without the place that I left from, so I still feel very fondly about Full Sail University, where I worked for almost 14 years. But this was the right time to move forward, and certainly love leaning into this podcast and what we're doing and how we're evolving this from just being a place where you can come and listen to all of the things that we're going to be building over the next few months. And we'll share that as we get here.
I mean, I share your excitement for that as we are in the midst of season 4 here, because there's so much that we have on the horizon coming through this podcast and through other things. I'm pretty sure that the guest that we have right now is probably one of one in the world. Do you know any lawyer, scuba instructor, stand-up comedians? Have you ever met one?
I know lawyers who might be better served. They may have represented me at some point telling jokes than they have been at practicing law.
Okay.
But
well, Mark Christopher is our guest, and I interestingly met him playing trivia with a friend, with a mutual friend. Yes, the mutual friend he's known since grade school, and I've known since college. It's a college friend of mine, so Chris Wheeler. So thank you, Chris, for introducing me to Mark Christopher. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, Chris, for introducing me to the fellas of the Back Nine podcast as well.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you, and your story is so interesting. So you know you want to be a comedian growing up, and you get into it. You've got that creative mind. You want to do that. You realize that you have to kind of get a grown-up job at some point, so you become a lawyer, and then that's kind of.
I foolishly thought that might be a lawyer. Yes, yeah.
And so, how do you go from comedian to lawyer? Like, there's a lot of other things you could do that are creative, that could pay the bills, and you go lawyer.
There's a surprising overlap between comedians and lawyers. I think there are far more people who go in the opposite direction from lawyer to comedian. I could rattle off names that people might recognize. But yeah, a friend of mine, and I'll give full credit, his name is Guy Branum. He was the heavyset guy in that recent movie Bros, and he's been a writer in Hollywood. He said, law school is the suicide pill that every 20-something keeps on the nightstand, basically.
That's good.
But it's true for a lot, particularly for a lot of creative people, and particularly in the United States, where you don't need to have any particular undergrad degree in order to pursue a career in law. So you major in whatever you're encouraged to or want to major in. And I majored in English literature, and then you grab your machete upon graduating and hack your way through the brush for a while and figure out life is a bit more of a struggle than I had expected. And at some point, for me, it was quite late, but you might make that decision to try to sort of up your earning potential. And law school is usually kind of like the easiest path, not the easiest path, but the clearest path to upper middle class.
Yeah, liberal
life,
arts, right?
Until you realize what an empty promise that is, and then you get
yeah. I went to school with a lot of English majors, history majors, poli-sci majors who didn't know what they wanted to do, so why not the law? Yeah. But from the beginning, when you were little, Dennis alluded to the fact, and in our sort of pre-show talk here, you talked about wanting to be in comedy from the time you were little. Where did that develop?
Well, grew up in a household where I was at least occasionally allowed to stay up late enough to watch the comedian's son, Johnny Carson. So, I remember Jerry Seinfeld's very first set on The Tonight Show. I used to watch David Letterman's morning show before he even had a late night show. So I always really enjoyed stand-up comedy. I was of that generation that would recite Eddie Murphy's Delirious on the playground until an adult came along and told you not to use that language anymore. Then Bill Cosby came along and told Eddie Murphy not to use that language anymore. Right. We all know how that story played out. But all credit to the Cos. Not that he deserves much credit at all, but I must have watched Bill Cosby himself probably 50 times right before that became the Cosby Show. I hope that did not.
No, when he was the most popular comedian in the world, you don't have to. Nobody has to apologize for that.
Yeah, so that had, and then the first comedian I ever saw live was Stephen Wright at the Carefree.
Oh, I remember you told me
the
that.
Carefree Theater in Boca Raton,
Boston guy.
Yeah, and he and another guy named Emo Phillips, who's not as well remembered today, or huge influences on my joke writing, I would say. And that kind of line of comedy, at least I see as progressing through Sarah Silverman onto Anthony Jeselnik today, the people who really enjoy that kind of setup followed by a very, very dark, unexpected twist. And that is what really appeals to me. And
That's your style.
Yes. I don't lean as hard into kind of an impenetrable character as a lot of those people do, but I start from that kind of writing style and then try to incorporate it into something that's a little bit more conversational.
I love that there's a style because he knows I'm so fascinated by stand-up comics. I'd love to be one. I don't think I ever could, but I love listening to them, watching them, looking at the ones who are really good and catching exactly that, what their style is, what the cadence is. I heard Jerry Seinfeld say once that it's not just talent, it is the writing, because if you miss one word, the joke misses, right? You can just not, you can be really good at writing, but it's like a word. And then when you're telling the joke, if you miss that word, the joke's flat. If you make a mistake. So the precision of it is mind-blowing to me.
Absolutely. One guy really, I'm not a huge fan of him, but Bo Burnham, people will be familiar with, who comes at comedy from a background in music. And the thing I really admire about him is he is so precise to a degree that a musician would have to be. But yeah, it's absolutely there in comedy. And I love to watch certain specials. John Mulaney has a couple of moments in one of his specials where it was almost a mystery of how he got from one joke to another. But then when you watch it, you can see where he inserts a grace note basically into the set that allows him to transition from one thing to another. And I've seen Anthony Jeselnik do that as well. It's how did he get from there to there? Oh, and it's it's unnatural in terms of speech, but you realize that in rehearsing this and performing it, they noticed there was a gap and they found out that way to fill it. But you only get there approaching it from the writing, going through a very exhaustive rehearsal process and trial and error. Yeah.
So it's clear that you take a very studious approach to watching other comedians and dissecting what they do. In some ways, I want to ask you, how does that compare to the studying you did in law school? Because we're making that comparison. But tell me about that process. What are you looking for? How do you try to learn? How do you try to get better and improve at something you're already very well established at doing?
So a couple of things, and to address what you were saying, when I'm watching someone, I try to just have a very wide funnel and absorb as much as I can. But a lot of stuff, I'll watch it for 5 minutes and I'll just realize either I don't like what this person does, or this person, even though they're great, what they're doing is so different from what I'm doing that this isn't going to – it's a spice that is not going to fit with my native cuisine. I'm not going to put dill in my bolognese no matter how –
You can appreciate the art without wanting to bring it in.
I might try that in another recipe, but that's just not what I do. And then there are some people I'll watch, and I'm not like taking anything. I'm not stealing a premise, or obviously not taking a joke, but like I just find that my gears are moving very, very quickly as I watch certain people, and I wind up pausing what they're doing and think about, well, maybe we go in this direction, and I wind up coming out of that special with a bunch of bullet points of stuff that I might incorporate. So that's one thing. But in terms of like how if I wanted to develop a new minute of material, what I find is I get up there with the material I already have, start rehearsing it just in an empty room, maybe my living room, hopefully no one home. And because you learn to feel where there's a space where something else could be.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, I'm not going to try to tell it, but your inflation joke, can you do that one for us real quick?
All right, so I talk about leaving the law, and I say, well, one day Human Resources came to my office and they said, Mark, we drug test, and 2 months ago you tested positive for cocaine, and then last week crystal meth. What's going on with you? I said, I think it's obvious my salary's not keeping up with inflation. You don't start paying me more, I'm going to be huffing glue at the office party, Yeah. P.S. We're out of glue.
That's so good. That's so good.
I love that second punch. Like, just as I'm coming back from reeling from the first one, there's the second one. We're out of glue. That's great.
The glue part is great. In all seriousness, not that we have to get serious, but when you make that decision, right? A lot of people listen to this show. We've had a bunch of people come on and say it took to get into the second half of their life to really, really embrace their dream and get back into it, right? There's something about this time in our lives where we say, I got to chase that. And you're doing more than chasing it. You're a paid comedian now. You're making a living doing it. But what is that transition like in your brain? And take it through like the people that are challenged by that right now and thinking, I want to do, whether it's comedy or playing the cello or the harp or whatever it is. What is it about those for you that got you there?
One thing, and this is, I hope people can have more agency than to need to reach this point, but if anyone knows people who've entered the law and found out that it wasn't really right for them, it can be pretty excruciating. So a lot of big changes, whether it's on a national level or a personal level, are necessitated by crisis. And I was not going to do that anymore. It was sort of the decision I made with regard to practicing law. And so there were just so many things that it was just not compatible with my personal happiness, and happiness makes it sound much too frivolous. But it was just not going to be something that was part of my life going forward another 5 or 10 years. So I wouldn't think that I wouldn't want all of your listeners to think they have to reach that point. But having a little bit of a financial cushion, and then just realizing, okay, I don't need much more than this. I don't need to be chasing a bigger house. I don't need to be chasing a partnership track in my firm. I'm comfortable enough that what I really need to be focusing on is getting myself into a place in a career where I can see myself being satisfied moving forward. And that it wasn't the first time, it wasn't from the law back into comedy. I spent some time on boats as well. It was interesting. I would meet a lot of people there because, of course, again, just to go back, I was a cruise director for scuba diving liveaboard. So I'd be with a very small group of 16 people for about 10 days at a time. A lot of them sort of upper middle class, a lot of doctors and a lot of lawyers. And inevitably it would come out that I had been a lawyer in my previous career. And invariably all the lawyers on the boat would have a sit down with me at some time with this with this look in their eyes, like, I need to know if I can really do this. Yeah. Like, were you really a lawyer? You're not like an ex-con who says he was like, no, I really did this. Did, like, your wife leave you and take everything, and now you're on the boat? Did she leave you with the boat? Is that how? Did her father own the boat? Is that why you're on the boat? Are you in exile? Is this you're
hiding from the feds?
But I would get all of those questions, all of those, and you could see that it is a profession. Even the people who love it and do very, very well at it have had that Thelma and Louise dream of just taking the car off the cliff, and they have a lot of questions.
We'll be right back. Listeners, you know I've been talking about Pete Learning for a few weeks now. Pete is an out-of-the-box training department that helps companies of all sizes reach their company training initiatives. So picture this. Your company leaders hold all kinds of institutional knowledge, but it takes time for them to create and manage the training that it takes to share that knowledge and other company objectives with their employees. And that's time away from what those leaders do best. That is where Pete comes in. Pete uses artificial intelligence, AI, to create robust, threaded training curriculum quickly and inexpensively. Put simply, Pete is an indispensable partner for any growing company. It is win-win at every level. So visit Pete Learning at pete.com. That is PETE.com.
Three Bridges is proud to be a sponsor of the Back Nine. My business partner and I founded the company in 2019 with the simple premise that we wanted to be the best storytellers for your brand. Let's be real here. We say bring your brand to life because if you don't have video, your brand is either dead or dying. We recently completed a project with a huge resort out in Colorado Springs called Garden of the Gods. We produced multiple videos that I am personally very proud of, and more importantly, they are thrilled with them. If you want to see our work, check out 3 Bridges Consulting on our YouTube page. That's the number 3 Bridges Consulting on YouTube, and see how we can breathe life into your brand.
All right, back to the show.
So as this episode is airing, my daughter's starting law school right now. Okay. No, my youngest one, but she's looking forward. It's been a passion for her for a long time. But
hey, I loved law school.
Yeah,
It was practicing that was awful. Yeah. And my dad's an attorney, and when I said I might be interested in becoming one, he said, "Don't." That was his one word. One word. He doesn't speak in one word, but that was the one. But we do talk, Mark, on this show a lot about pursuing passions and what it takes to pursue passion and how we get there. And often that on the way, there are steps of failure, right? You have to overcome things. And nobody fails more obviously or spectacularly than a comedian on stage who isn't getting laughs. And every comedian has nights like that. Bob Newhart, who just passed away, someone was recounting a story about when he was on a TV show. The friend of mine asked him, who was working on the show, asked him, "Have you ever been killed on a TV show before?" He said, "No, but I've died in a lot of comedy clubs." And right? And so everybody has. So what is that like when you're there and you're struggling through it and for whatever reason, and it's probably more the audience than it is you that night, but it isn't landing. And how has that informed your ability to be successful as you've pursued your passion going forward?
I think the Chinese call it investing in loss.
It's really? I have not heard that. That's good.
I heard that in the context of martial arts, like when you go out and you let someone else practice the technique on you, and it's very informative to learn why. And having it done to you, you learn about why it works as much as executing it effectively on your opponent. So let's just call it the first 2,000 times that happens. It's agonizing, and then eventually you learn to be able to just sit in it without all the bay doors of the spaceship closing as your body and mind seek to protect you and to protect your ego from this horrible, humiliating thing that's happening. And you can just sit in that and realize that it is what it is. This is just an audience that maybe they're not large enough to have that pilot light that just sort of ignites the room. So there's that. They haven't been able to order their drinks yet, so they're distracted.
Right.
They didn't know there was going to be a comedy show, which is always a wonder.
Oh, that's great.
Any bookers out there who think you're going to just go into a room that's already got people in it and spring a comedy show on them, please stop doing that. Anyway, just a public service announcement. But once you realize that, and then you can sit in that, then you can start to play with things. It's like, oh, okay, maybe if I slow down and like try to just make more eye contact and just like flip the awkwardness back on them, their response will be to try to engage with me just to protect themselves from the awkwardness, which I can only deflect back on them because I have killed some part of my brain that would otherwise be triggering my flight response in this situation. So it does become a very, very... Not that I would ever ask for it or seek it out, but yeah, you can find ways to use it.
That's good, investing in your loss. One of the things that has to be a factor is age and the demographic you're in front of because of your different style of comedy. You and I had a conversation about would you ever be on a cruise ship and be a comedian there? Because I've seen multiple ones, good ones, and I've seen ones epically fail on cruise ships. Comedians just dive, and they all have the prerequisite jokes about how much food there is, like the canned jokes that you have. Like I think that they must share the jokes because they're kind of, there's a handful of them that are exactly the same. So on cruise ships. So I just, that audience is so like they know what they're walking into. They got to write the show specifically for that audience.
Yes, I started comedy in San Francisco, and I've always written to more of, I think, kind of a coastal audience.
Yeah, smarter.
And I'm not going to use that word, but thank you. And here's the thing. When I go into some of those rooms where they're on land, I don't, to this point, have not been working on the cruise ships, but sometimes when I go into the rooms that have more of like a cruise ship demographic, I have had people just, this is not what we were expecting, and walk out. And now I don't use any bad language in my act, but like I do jokes like the one I told you. I've got jokes about poisonings. I just various
light
things.
Stuff, yeah.
It's light, but if people expect 30 jokes about airplane food or something like that, and my appearance and my age might reinforce that expectation, they tend to be disappointed by what they hear. On the other hand, if I go into a club in New York and it's 25 to 35-year-olds and it's a bunch of people who are their age, and then I walk up and they're expecting something less, and then they get something that's more, that's a very pleasant surprise.
Do you write differently for different crowds? If you know the audience is going to be a little younger, do you have different jokes?
I really only almost have one joke that I'm cautious about saying in front of more conservative or older crowds, and it's really just I have so many young LGBTQ people have moved into my neighborhood that the church in my corner closed up and moved to a different part of town. Like I had no idea you could gay away the prey, and it's a twist on pray away the gay.
That's great.
It blows up the room in like New York, and a lot of people, if they're not like comedy savvy, they just hear the word and they think I'm going to say something homophobic, and so they close up.
Right.
Or the people who do process it and parse the language quickly don't like that it's a ding against the homophobic strain of certain organized religions.
Right.
But that's the only... And I'll throw that one out just to see sometimes where the crowd is. Every comic will have a tester joke to say, oh, okay, can I go in this direction or should I just peel back? Like, where is the crowd, politically in terms of...
So you might alter your routine based on what you hear in that feedback.
But really, I can't think of too many other jokes that I would shy away from. It's like the rest of that bit I'll go into regardless of how the crowd reacts. But it's really...
I asked you about what you learn from bombing on stage, which happens very infrequently for you, I'm sure. The flip side of that is, here is something you've wanted to do since you were little. What is that feeling like when a joke, maybe you're not sure about it, or it's a good joke, but you feel it resonate with the audience? Mm-hmm. Is that what you live for when you're in this pursuit of passion?
Yeah, absolutely. A day well spent to me is sometimes you'll wake up in the morning and there's like a kernel of a joke somewhere in that like misty corridor between like sleep and your waking day. And you wake up and write a joke and maybe rehearse it and then go out that evening and it works. I need nothing more from a day than that.
So
that's the greatest thing. That's whatever, a novelist who breaks through a writer's block and finishes the chapter that had been giving her trouble, or a poet or a musician who just figured out the lick that complements the riff, whatever the comparator would be, I don't know, but that's, like I said, that's all I need from a day.
Well, I think that's an important point, and we kind of can almost cap on this, is that find the funny, right? I mean, most of what we do, what you do in comedy, and when I'm thinking of, like, you know, there's certain things during the day that make you laugh, or you could make a joke out of, like the thing I started the show with, walking the dog, and has it ever answered to the command, like those kinds of things, right? Like
my dog's shock collar is set to respond to my so it's there's the one. It works. It's like a clapper. I just
great. And the
like,
dog,
wow, how does the dog respond? Anyway,
well, there's some animal rights people you might want to hold back.
Relax,
just kidding.
Relax. I have a cat.
It's just a joke.
But I do think find the funny in your day, whether it's, you don't even have to watch a stand-up comic, you can, but there's so many things during the day that can bring humor into your life.
Yes, and one of them is seeing me live. So
yes, well done.
It seemed like the time to go into the plugs.
Give us how people can find you on Instagram and the whole 9 yards. Give us your spiel.
Oh, thank you. All right. So yeah, my name is Mark Christopher. My Instagram handle is Mark, M-A-R-K, the letter C, and then ha. So it's not Mark Cha, but Mark Cha-ha, if you start to type. There is no Mark Cha-cha, as far as I know, until it becomes worthwhile for someone to try to pirate my feed. And I am going to be this weekend, Friday, at the Riverwalk Comedy Club at Massa and More. That's on 5th Avenue in Lauderdale. On Saturday, I'll be at Brendan's Sports Bar in Pompano Beach. And if you happen to be on the west coast of the United States, August 9th and 10th, I will be at the Chinook Winds Resort in Lincoln City, Oregon.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, we're excited to have had you. Do you want to lead us with, like, your best joke right now that you're going to tell in one of those shows? No? Okay.
Yeah. No. I'll just...
That's all you know.
Yeah, I'll leave a little meat on the bone for people to come out. But just, I was talking to you beforehand, leaving the law for comedy. I recommend it for everybody. It feels great to finally be a respectable member of society.
Yes.
Yeah,
excellent.
Thank you so much.
Great
to have you.
Thank you guys for having me. Love what you're doing here.
Yeah, we're going to come see you live for sure.
Absolutely.
Please do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening.
All right. Well, buddy, so many good takeaways there, huh?
A lot of good takeaways. The first takeaway is I'm thinking about some of the comedians that you saw on a cruise ship, and if they bomb on a cruise ship, there's nowhere for them to go, right? I mean, the whole rest of the trip, people are walking by and they're shielding their eyes from them, right? And
they just stay in their cabin. They don't come out.
They'd have to,
right? When they bomb, they just stay in their cabin. That being said, I have seen good ones as well, but they are very, very generically inclined, and sometimes they'll switch their act. The 9 o'clock will be the family. And the guy will be like, "Come back at 11. I'm a little racier at 11."
Yeah, right.
Right. And then
the more serious takeaway I had though was just listen to Mark talk. To be good as a comedian or as a writer or as a poet that he mentioned, you really have to be a good observer of life. And I think about even some of the words he used, like talking about the fog of the morning is the misty corridor. There's an art to that, and it's innate. I mean, there's some things you can learn.
You have it. You're an English. You guys are both English
That's
majors.
What I was fishing for. I was really hoping you were going to compliment me on that.
You were fishing for the English major compliment and the fact that you're the writer.
No, but I thank you. Yeah, whatever. But seriously, though, I mean, did you notice that about that? And really good comedians, and he's clearly got that, are good observers of life and human nature.
Well, and I think the other thing is, to be a comedian, you cannot be afraid of failing, right? And we talk about the life lessons that you get. You got to fail to succeed, and I don't think there's a profession in the world that can fail more, as you said, fantastically than a comedian, but they also live for that laugh. They live for that moment of success. So the lows are really low, but the highs are really high, which makes it worth it, which is really like a metaphor for life, if you think about it. Like, if you can get yourself to be able to fail spectacularly, then the highs are going to be really, really good.
Well,
right?
it's worth it, right? Yeah. It's worth the risk of that failure for that euphoria.
Right. So I think that's really my takeaway. And then the investing in that loss, right? Like the martial artist that says, give me your best shot so I can see how it's going to feel when I do it to somebody else. Yeah, that was a great analogy too.
We're all going to lose, right? We're never going to be perfect at anything. We're all going to go through things that are painful or difficult, whether it's in relationship or occupation or just life, because there's highs and lows. And being able to learn from those errors, whether they're forced or unforced, whether they happen to you or there's something that you cause, and being able to pull something positive out of that for future success is a real key. It's a key for any comedian, and I think that's a lesson that I take away from Mark today.
Yeah, and my biggest lesson, and I had this lesson before today, as you know, is find the funny, right? Like find the things that make you laugh in a day. I mean, life is hard, right?
Yeah.
So if you can find the funny in your day, if you can notice something that you might not have noticed in humor, and then if you are, we've talked about this too, if you are having a rough time, turn on a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
There's a million of them now across Netflix and Prime and everywhere else. Find your cup of tea. Find the one that's going to make you laugh, or a funny movie, because there's nothing that heals you if you're hurting more than laughter.
Yeah, including our guest, Mark Christopher, who performs all over Florida. South Florida, is going to be in California, as he said, and is available on Instagram at Mark C. Ha Ha.
Yep, and looking forward to seeing him. And then hopefully next time we'll roast everybody at trivia too. And we will see you all next time on the Back Nine Podcast.
Hey, listeners, we just wanted to thank you for being a part of our community to date. We love the feedback you've given us to this point as we continue to build the Back Nine above and beyond what we're already doing.
Yeah, help us by following, subscribing, and or downloading and sharing with your friends and family as well. We have lots of plans for how we can continue to provide good perspective and fantastic resources for all of you. So join us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or your preferred platform, and know that we are incredibly grateful for your support.
Yeah, we are. We look forward to seeing you in person soon, hint, hint, and knowing that you're out there making the loop with us every week on the Back Nine.
If you need a benefit auctioneer for your next fundraising gala, hire Eric Goodman, who's broken fundraising records all over the country. Josh and I have known Eric for over 30 years, and he's one of the most passionate, energetic, and hard-working people we know. Eric's consulting strategies and successful fundraising techniques is why he raised $1 million in 10 minutes at a recent event. Visit yourfundraisingteam.com to see a video of his work, testimonials, and then book with Eric today so your nonprofit can have a record-breaking night.
The Back Nine is fully baked with hugs and kisses by Stella Mix Productions and recorded at Pixelworks Studios in Delray Beach, Florida.